clear based on not only the vector of attack, that is how the attack was executed, what we know, what's been revealed publicly, as well as sort of what's happened since, that this has got to be a foreign power and it's not a criminal network. Why do I say that? Because the government now, in response to this, has been looking on the dark web. There are websites in which, if it had been a criminal enterprise, the value in that information is to sell it, and you sell it on the dark web. That hasn't happened. We haven't seen that. And so that really, by inference, suggests that it's a foreign power that understands very well the value in that sort of information. It's interesting because they have a different sort of focus, right? Al-Qaeda tried to keep secret their communications, their objectives, their goals, other than to say they wanted to fight the West. ISIS, we know, sort of promotes their own propaganda. Horrific as it is, they loudly proclaim it. And so we've seen beheading videos, the burning of the Jordanian pilot, the sorts of things you wouldn't have seen out of Al-Qaeda. The Islamic State focuses on what I call the near enemy. So they're very focused on establishing the caliphate. The caliphate for them is real. They're fighting for actual physical territory. Al-Qaeda, the enemy was the far enemy, the West. The caliphate was notional. Because ISIS has made the actual physical establishment of the caliphate a priority, it's fueled their momentum. It's attracted foreign fighters to the tune of 20 to 30,000 of them to them. And so ISIS, the Islamic State, has a different sort of DNA, if you will. In some ways it makes them a juicy target. The other thing that makes them quite different from Al-Qaeda is the internet and the way that they've leveraged the internet. We think of a physical battle as being air, sea, space, right, land. Well, the Islamic State has made the internet a battle space, and they've made it one that forces us, frankly, to adjust our thinking about that. We must defeat and deny them that battle space, just as we try to do others. So I put the cyber threat right up there. We talked about, there are things that I think we need to be doing now, like a commission, like a threat commission, like the exchange with the private sector. Counterproliferation, I am deeply worried about an increase in proliferation of nuclear and nuclear-related materials. I think with the Iranian deal, we already see the Sunni Arab states talking about acquiring nuclear capability. And I think and then you look at a sort of mature nuclear-capable state like Pakistan, and you look at unrest there. So I worry across a very broad spectrum worldwide about proliferation issues. President Obama has had this nuclear security summit. He's increased sort of dialogue and cooperation worldwide about that, and that is much to his credit. But I think we really need to understand as a global community how we're going to deal with the inevitable proliferation issue. We're going to continue to, Ray Odierno, before his retirement, the Army Chief of Staff, talked about the terrorism and the Islamic State as being a 10 to 20-year battle. Part of that is fueled by the largest refugee crisis the world has ever known. There are 11 million all in, either displaced persons or refugees out of Syria alone. That's the next 2 generations of Islamic State recruits. These are people who feel abandoned, denied by the West, inadequate housing, medical care, and education. It is destabilizing to our partners in the region. And so when I think about terrorism and the future of terrorism, you can't separate that out now from the refugee crisis. I didn't expect as a counterterrorism official I'd be worrying about a refugee crisis. I think I can't address the counterterror problem without addressing the refugee crisis. And so it's a humanitarian disaster that absolutely, I think we will be dealing with over the next 5 to 10 years.